I don't know why it hates me. For those of you who keep jumping on, bless your hearts. This is attempt 3 to join my sister in. Every time I go to join her in, it fails my broadcast. That's kind of rude. Okay, here we go. Let's try one more time. Please work. Welcome back, Auntie. I don't even know. It's
I
just,
don't understand this.
you guys don't believe us, but every time, right before, we practice to make sure it works and it's not having any problems.
Never an issue. I
Ah.
wonder if Facebook somehow has a way to differentiate, like if we're live to everyone or just to ourselves, because we don't have any issues when it's just us.
No. And then I think
Oh
it's
man.
like I just have to close my app and start it over again. And then it goes, thank you.
You
That'll
know,
work.
someone told me how funny it must be to watch our YouTube videos because almost everyone starts off with us saying, "Oh, finally, like it
Ah,
works,"
yeah, exactly.
instead of like a polished professional, like, "Oh, hi, look at how easy it is that we do this."
No, it's not easy at all. Well,
Oh,
welcome
well, hi
everybody.
guys.
It's Wednesday again.
Yay. And we missed you guys last week. There was just a little bit of conflict with the schedule. Wendy was out of town, but we had a guest speaker, and she's going to come back and she's going to speak about some postpartum depression in the near future. That's going to be a very, very interesting one. But that's to be determined. So coming soon.
Mm-hmm. And we
But
actually have a bye week next week too, unfortunately, because we're both traveling again. So we will not be on next Wednesday. So catch us
it's
today.
not really unfortunate. Wendy will be in Disney World. I'll be in Maui. So
Don't tell my
eh,
kids that. Actually, I won't be in Disney World yet. I'll be on my way.
sure. Sure.
But
Well,
don't
hopefully your
tell
kids don't watch
anybody.
Facebook.
We've made it this far and they haven't figured it out. So shush, don't spill
What do
beans
they
if you
think's
see them.
happening?
Oh, they just think we're going to Florida, which we are, and we're doing some Arbonne in Tampa and going to see the manatees and such. So
Awesome.
yeah,
And then a surprise Disney World with
we road
family
trip
trip.
all the time. So like this isn't weird that we're going on a road trip. They just, it's going to be fun.
Oh, you guys are driving. You're not flying.
No, we're driving. Yeah. So we're going to Florida on a road
Ah,
trip for 2 weeks. I'll be gone.
that's really exciting. Well, for those of you who don't know who we are or who are just hopping on, this is What Do We Know with Wen and Wit. I'm the Wit part. She's the Wen part. Our hope in this broadcast that we do weekly is to bring some education, inspiration, and perspective on various topics and meet somewhere in the middle. We do this every Wednesday at 1:30 Pacific time. And as you guys are coming on here, let us know where you're coming on from. If this is your first time, if you've struggled through all 20 odd episodes of us not getting on in time, we'd
Sorry
love to
about that.
hear, what you're thinking. If you have any topics you want us to cover in the weeks to come, let us know. Wendy, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about anxiety, which just kind of came to me the other day. I was like, you know what? We need to talk about anxiety because I wrote a blog about it. I have a blog. It's called gainingmyperspective.com. And I wrote a blog about it actually back in June. And I got a lot of comments on that blog that, anxiety is kind of one of those things that unfortunately unites a lot of us. And we
Mm-hmm.
all can relate to and struggle with. And maybe you don't. So one of the questions, the audience participation questions today is, do you struggle with anxiety? And if so, how does it present for you? Yeah, so and yeah, what are we going to talk about next week? You guys give us ideas. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, tell us about your struggles with anxiety because I just was on a plane. What's today? Wednesday. I got home Monday night. And I don't like to fly. Maybe that's when you have
Mm-hmm.
anxiety popping up. But I fly so much now that I'm kind of used to it. But I think I had to wake up at 3:15 in the morning to get in an Uber, to get to the airport, to get on my flight and whatever. And it was freezing cold. Um, but I was getting off in like 100-degree temperatures in Tennessee. So you never know how to dress, accordingly.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit chilly getting on the plane, and it sparked, I don't know if this has ever happened to you before, but and this happened when I was little, when I was younger, Whit, maybe you remember, like I would start to kind of shiver and then just go into like convulsive shaking. I don't know if you remember me ever doing that, but it started to happen as I was getting on the plane. And then you kind of spiral a little bit because you're recognizing that something is happening in your body that's a little bit outside of your control. And that's not typically how my anxiety presents, but I think it was just so early and I was so tired and I was really fatigued because I was sick that I think I just like it started to slip out of my control. And I was on the freaking struggle bus real bad for that takeoff.
Oh, no.
Just really trying to like grab a hold of myself. So anyway, it occurred to me, I got off the plane. I was like, Whit, I know what we should talk about on Wednesday. Anxiety, because, I hate it. So maybe that's something you guys can relate to. So,
Yeah. And the thing that bugs me the most about anxiety is that it's not, it's a very real feeling, but usually it's accompanied or exacerbated by worrying about a outcome that doesn't exist, right? So it's manifesting and really heightening in your body as this emotional response, but it's not, in my experience, it's not something that has happened. It's something I am assuming will happen. And that's what's the most frustrating part is in my mind, I can say, you're being crazy. But in my head and my heart and my sweating and all of the reactions that physically show up, I cannot get myself to calm down. And it is such a frustrating, like helpless feeling. Don't you think?
It's the worst. Mel Robbins talks about it in the 5-Second Rule, her book. And she speaks about it. If you've ever heard her speak, she struggled with anxiety or still does, but she has got some tools to control anxiety. So check out that book if that's something you struggle with. But she talks about, sometimes your body will just without, any causation send a rush of adrenaline like through your body. And it can happen. Like she uses the example of, let's say you are coming up behind somebody in traffic and they stop suddenly and you stop suddenly and you have that, like that adrenaline rush that is caused by an actual recognition of I'm in danger, right? So that happens. And then your body understands why that happened. And so you calm right down once you realize that you're not in danger anymore, like you prevented it. But sometimes your body will send that impulse out and you have a physical, like either a heart palpitation or that rush of adrenaline, or you can kind of feel the like chills go through you, and your brain cannot understand why that happened. And so then you start to think, is it because I'm dying? Is it, is there something wrong in my body? And your brain goes through this like searching process, trying to discover why did your body just do that, And so that was so interesting to me because that's exactly it, right? Sometimes it's logical. And sometimes I will just start having physical symptoms without any logical, like I'm not worried about anything. I'm not even thinking about anything. And I'll just have like anxiety come on me. So that's the most frustrating is when I'm like, what the heck am I even freaking out about right now?
Well, and sometimes, I don't know if you can relate to this either. My husband doesn't have anxiety really, not that he has recognized. I've never really seen it manifest in him. And so I am a very anxious person. I've gotten it under control a lot, but there are times when I'm feeling out of control of what's happening. And I do have trouble calming down. And there's nothing worse to me than when my husband's like, well, just calm down.
Yeah.
Like, well, if I could, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And then it just almost escalates because on top of all the other feelings, then there's kind of, I don't know if embarrassment is the right word, but that guilt of like, well, I'm not trying to be like this,
Not trying to freak out. Well, I never had anxiety until my like early 20s at all. And one of my best friends, Tess, had anxiety really bad. And she was my college best friend and we lived together. And I remember being in Europe with her and she started to have an anxiety attack. And I was like, Chris, I just did not understand it. I was like, just calm down, like take a breath, And I really, sorry, Tess, I thought it was made up. Like I thought she was just being dramatic, I'm like, dude, this is like not the time or place, girlfriend, to be like going over the, I'm like, you just got to pull it together. Like I know you're stressed out, but like you're being overdoing it.
Your anxiety is really inconvenient for me.
Like, you're just overdoing it right now. And I just did not understand at all that it was out of her control until the very first time I ever struggled with anxiety. Actually, I was in, if you know me, I did theater my whole life, right up until my early 20s. And I was in a show and I was not a lead role and it was not opening night. And I had like 7 lines. This was nothing to be worried about. It was intermission and I was reading Harry Potter in full costume. And I felt almost like a tingle go through my brain from one side to the other. And it caused me to start to feel like I was going to pass out and sweaty. Like I got really, really sweaty all the time, all of a sudden. And I did not know what was happening at all. And I unzipped my costume and I was bright red. And
oh man,
my stage manager thought I was maybe having an allergic reaction. I had a wig on and, but I had worn the costume before. It was very strange. Anyway, I ended up going to the ER in an ambulance that day because I did not know what was going on. And I felt like I was going to pass out, and I wasn't hyperventilating. It wasn't like your normal anxiety attack. So I didn't recognize it at all. I just felt like, I don't know what's happening in my body. I feel sick. I feel like I'm going to pass out and maybe I'm going to die. And if you look at what anxiety is, the definition of it is feelings of impending doom, which if you have anxiety, you're laughing to yourself because that is like exactly right. It's just feelings like all of a sudden I was like, maybe I'm dying. Like maybe this is death. And then you can't get out of your head that maybe you're dying. And so it's not going to get any better when you feel like you're dying. So that was my first exposure to it. And I'm like, what the heck? You get to the hospital, they check you for everything under the sun, and they say, oh, you had an anxiety attack. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, what? That was all make-believe right then? Just like, whoa.
Karma.
Oh, I felt bad. I was like, so Tess, it's real, man.
So would you say that there's like varying degrees of anxiety you've experienced though? Or do you only recognize anxiety in your life when it's like heightened to the max? I mean,
no, there's totally there's stress and worry, which is not anxiety, but it can make you feel anxious. But I think if you suffer from anxiety, it means something different. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you're someone who's like, yeah, I feel anxious a lot, or I have like, I'm a stressed out person. I'm like, that could be anxiety, but I feel like there are times when I'm stressed and not anxious. And there are times when I'm anxious and it's not because I'm stressed. So I feel like there is, once you suffer from it, there's a fear of it. So if have you ever had an anxiety attack, Whit, like a full unraveling anxiety attack?
I think there have been moments of extreme anxiety where I've had trouble breathing. I have never had to be hospitalized, and I've never been medicated for anxiety. Something that we didn't talk about before the live, but I'm curious about you being on the receiving end. What would you prefer someone do as a friend or as a person supporting you when you are going through anxiety? Because I know I've been on the friend side with a friend of mine who has a lot of anxiety. And my best advice is to just listen and be calming. But I don't know if that's right.
Distraction. So if I was in an anxiety attack, which I've probably had maybe 10, like full on, where you go over the edge. And the way I describe it is you can feel like it's like you're in a river and you feel the current picking up and you start to panic a little bit and you start to swim. Like, I got to save myself from this. I got to save myself. But the more you try to get to the shore, the more the current's pushing you towards that waterfall. And if you've ever been over the waterfall before, and what I mean is if you've ever had an anxiety attack where you've truly gone out of control and you're sobbing and the whole shebang, you are fearing it. And the fear of it is perpetuating the anxiety as it's approaching, because there's you're going to get to a place where if you go over the edge, like it just has to play out until it's done, which is so frustrating because you might be in a place where you don't really have time to like play it out, but if if you do go over the edge and you find yourself in a full-on attack, which it's been a while, knock on wood, but I did have a series, probably 5 years stretch of my life where it was always a threat. And if you are with someone who's having an anxiety attack, I would always tell whoever I was with, tell me a story. I need to focus on something to get out of my own brain, because right now I'm telling myself I'm dying. And I know if you've ever struggled with anxiety, you're not. So I needed to, it's kind of like what Mel Robbins says, you got to break that frontal cortex. You got to break the habitual thoughts and go into a new, break the habit, if that makes sense. So I need somebody to start telling me something that I can focus on. My rooster's here. Shut up for the live. Yeah. So that I can get out of my own head and calm down. So I would call Tess and she would start telling me a story, or, I'd be like, Thomas, tell me something, tell me a movie plot, just something mindless that's funny, maybe, that I can just concentrate on.
So, funny story you just reminded me of. And one of the times in my life I was most anxious is when I was, hello, Rooster, when I was delivering Dylan, and I had labored forever, so I was exhausted, which, again, when you said you woke up early, you were feeling, maybe not yourself. And so same kind of thing when you're exhausted or other factors are playing in. And then I had to get a C-section, which I'm not a fan of needles or blood or major surgery. So I was not happy. But then when we're in the OR, I was shaking, partly because of the Pitocin and stuff, but also because I was terrified. And I told Chris, tell me a story, just like any story, tell me any story, my husband, to distract me. And then he starts telling me stories about how he was wasted in college. And let me tell you the most drunk thing I did. And I'm like, you're going to be a dad. And all these doctors, all these doctors are thinking you're the most ill-equipped father. Oh my gosh, any other story. But it did take me out of my shakes because I was mad at him.
Yep, that's hilarious.
So, there you go.
We would do that with Sarah when I was her doula, and she would get freaked. She'd say, movie. And, her husband or I would just jump right into there's this guy that, like the Ferris Bueller, just start talking about the movie plot of a movie, So, that is huge to distract. But there's a lot of ways that anxiety can present. And, we talked about the hyperventilating, the more obvious, shaking, the physical shaking. That's actually coming from too much adrenaline. And your body can't, it's making you spasm almost, which of course makes you freak out because you're out of control. Racing heartbeat, when you feel like your heart is just racing. Worst case scenario thoughts, right? You're just jumping to the next doom and gloom in your head. What are some other ones? I have heart palpitations, which is anxiety, and it happens almost every single day. I have heart palpitations. I actually just went this summer. I wore a heart monitor for a month straight, day and night, all the time, to check, which is actually one of my pieces of advice for you to experience relief from anxiety is I need to know for sure that there's nothing physically wrong with me. So on occasion, if my anxiety, I go through seasons where it's worse than others. And this summer, for whatever reason, heart palpitations, actually it started when I started running last year. So I didn't know if it was because of my running that now I was having heart palpitations. So ultimately, several months into it, I decided to wear that heart monitor for a month, and that all came back normal. They could register the heart palpitation. So it was classified as a normal irregular heart rate. I'm like, what is a normal irregular? What is that?
Right. Those two words don't go together.
Yeah, it means that for me, it's normal to have an irregular heart rate. There's nothing
forever, or in instances
forever. I can experience it forever. Then they did it a step further and gave me an echocardiogram, which is essentially an ultrasound of all the valves of the heart to make sure your heart's all moving well. And it worked well. So that gave me peace that now when I have heart palpitations, I know in my logical brain, I'm not dying. That's just some anxiety, or even nothing, or it's just nothing. Um, and I
Can
don't
you
have to worry
tell
about that.
that you're having heart palpitations
Yeah.
outside your body? What, by breathing or by
It
touching
feel
your chest
No,
or?
it feel you feel like you miss a beat. Like it makes you go, like you almost like
Oh,
feel like you missed a
okay.
heartbeat. And that's essentially what's happening is your heart like flutters and doesn't give you a full beat. So you like lose
Okay.
your breath. So it can be real. I mean,
Huh.
sometimes I
That's
get it.
scary.
I will have a heart palpitation, like I'll have two or three in a row where I almost start to black out because it is giving me an adrenaline rush. That's what's happening
Hmm.
is my mind is, because when your heart stops, they actually give you adrenaline. They give you a big pump of adrenaline to start your heart again. So my body does
Hmm.
that. So I get a heart palpitation, then I get a rush of adrenaline, and in my brain I know all is well. But I needed to go get all that figured out so that I could
Hmm.
have that peace of mind. Because when I would have these heart palpitations, I would freak out. I'm like, dude, am
Hmm.
I about to have a heart attack that I'm just like not aware of? So
Yeah.
totally go to the doctor, get physicals, make sure that you are okay, because they are real physical symptoms that go along with with anxiety. Shortness of breath, like you actually feel like you
Crazy.
cannot inflate your lungs, like not that like you can't. You feel like you cannot get your lungs to expand. That's
Hmm.
anxiety, but you also want to make sure that nothing's wrong with your lungs.
So, in general, these symptoms that you're describing, would you say that they're anxiety or that's an anxiety attack? Or is it kind of you can experience those symptoms even in a low case of anxiety?
So it is anxiety. It's like medical anxiety, which is essentially a physical symptom that's not related to anything that's real. That's like what
Okay.
anxiety is, if that makes sense. So you might not be
Okay.
worried about anything. It might not be caused by stress. But if your body is doing things that your brain is not like not spurring on, then
Hmm.
it's essentially anxiety. So that's
Crazy.
crappy. So here's some other tips.
Yeah.
Diet is a big one, you guys. When I am like this weekend, I was in Tahoe, really struggling with anxiety. Now, I am an introvert. That might surprise you. I'm an extroverted
Yeah.
introvert, which means my natural comfort is to be at my house in my comfies with very limited amounts of people. That's my comfort space. I can be extroverted. I'm an outgoing person, but that's not where I'm most comfortable, right? So I was in a house with 18 gals for 4 days. This is not my comfort zone. I need space to like go get, just calm down, go to bed, get some
Hmm.
rest. I hadn't slept for 3 nights because I had a congestion and I was sleeping on the couch, whatever.
Mm.
And I was wrecked. My stomach was in knots, having all kinds of fun bathroom problems. I'll just say it. And then I had
I'm
lots of heart palpitations,
the
tons of
food.
pressure, eating crap, drinking alcohol all the time. Alcohol, I know, is a trigger for my anxiety.
Most
Red
people
red
probably.
wine helps. One glass of red
Oh.
wine will take me out of an anxiety, like out of the edge of anxiety. Margaritas will put me in anxiety. It's like I think there's a lot of sugar in a lot of drinks that give you, they give your body like that sugar rush, which can present as like an adrenaline rush sometimes. But red wine is good for me.
That's hilarious.
Isn't that funny?
Don't give Wendy a margarita.
It does make me anxious sometimes. But yeah, diet, eating the right things. I was eating like crap. So, once my stomach will get upset if I'm anxious. Once my stomach's upset, then I'm anxious about like, where am I going to go to the bathroom? Like, like then it's just like, I'm just uncomfortable now. Now I just feel like I want to go home, and you just get in
And
that state.
I'm no doctor, but I feel like if, when your gut, what we know about gut health is when our gut is balanced and we're fueling it instead of causing it to overdrive with all the bad foods, that
Yes,
there's more serotonin produced, right? Which helps
exactly.
you be
Exactly.
happier.
Yep.
So to me, it would make sense that if you were lacking serotonin, it would be easier to fall off that waterfall that you were
Totally.
talking about, right?
Totally. Exactly.
So food would be definitely related.
Yep, for sure. Diet is a big one. And just identifying those stressors and eliminating them. So I knew okay, I'm getting stressed out, and I will vocalize that, like I'm having some anxiety, so that the people around me know, I went and took a shower. So again, just what can you do to take yourself out of the situation? Going
Mm-hmm.
for a walk outside, getting fresh air.
Fresh air.
When I was on the plane, breathing in through your nose, holding your breath for a second, and breathing out through your mouth, releasing it out of your mouth. That is a way to make sure you're getting enough oxygen, because part of anxiety causes you to take short breaths, and then you're not getting enough oxygen, and then you're starting to feel more lightheaded, and then you get that heaviness in your lungs, like you can't inflate them. It perpetuates. So I'm on the plane with my earphones in, listening to music, because music calms me down, breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth, just intentionally taking in those deep breaths to calm myself down. All these things are great. You can totally pull yourself out.
Our Aunt Janelle, who is actually going to be a guest speaker in a few weeks from now, she is a yoga instructor, and she knows a lot about meditation and calming qualities.
Yep.
And she said she recommends the in the nose, out the mouth breathing, but there's also a crazy word for a type of breathing through your nose exclusively that you could breathe. You literally cover up a nostril, breathe in through one nostril, and then switch and breathe it out.
Okay.
And part of it is like a spiritual connecting type of meditative quality, but the other part is it's distracting. So when you're having a stressful time and you're focused on, okay, and then I switch, it can lessen the situation. So I don't know what the word is, but if I find it, I'll drop it in the comments.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Exercise also creates serotonin in your body. So if I am exercising regularly, I don't have as much anxiety. I'm not saying go exercise if you're having an anxiety attack, although you could try that. I'm saying exercise as a form of medication to avoid anxiety in your life. That's going to be helpful as well.
Totally.
And then I think too, I did get on medication. I was on medication for a long time. And I know that a lot of you are going to give me I'm on medication, or, that's a very, very, very common thing that unites us is anti-anxiety and antidepressant drugs. So I was on medication for anxiety for, maybe a year and a half. And I am someone who does not want to be on medication long-term. So I went on the medication, and here's the problem with that. You're never addressing why you're having the symptoms, right? You're just masking them. You're essentially treating symptoms and not finding out what's causing the symptoms. So I got on a medication, which then of course created some side effects. So then I had to get on a second medication for those side effects. And then I was still having anxiety. And so I had to carry around a pill that if I had an anxiety attack, I could take the pill. So I'm taking 2 pills every single day, no matter what. And then I'm carrying around a pill for if I have an anxiety attack. Now you can tell me if you think that's the solution or if you think that's a janky way of handling the problem.
And how terrible to have to carry that with you. I mean, I don't, no slight against people who are getting help in whatever way they need.
Yeah.
But what if you didn't have your pill on you? I mean, then you're just as good as, you don't have any other tools to arm yourself with.
Sure.
Because you're relying upon this pill that you don't have.
Yeah.
That seems dangerous.
And if you lose your pills or your daily pills, I mean, people have massive withdrawals from those types of medications. It's just, to me, a very slippery slope. So my advice, again, not judgment. I totally understand, like you said, you got to do what you got to do. And I had to do what I had to do. I was out of control and had to get my feet under me so I could figure out what the heck was wrong and then start to back out of the medication. But I just did not see that as a solution. I saw it as a quick Band-Aid. And so my advice is to think of it that way and try to discover, like, what are some ways I can manage my anxiety outside of medication, or what are the stressors that are making me so anxious? Because I know the stressors, and I know now ahead of time, I'm going to walk into this weekend, it's going to make me have anxiety. So I'm just going to need to be mentally prepared to struggle with that. When we go to our global training conference, there's freaking badillions of people, and I have to be on all day long. Like, I know ahead of time, this week is going to be exhausting for me. I need to make sure there's nobody stays in my room, or if there are people that are staying in my room, they're close friends and family, so that I know I have a place to retreat to. You know, like set yourself up for success. When you know what your triggers are, you can plan ahead to not struggle as much, right?
Totally.
That's my advice.
Totally. And we say this all the time with these talks that we do. We're not experts, you know, like we're just sharing what works for us. I know there are solutions and things that we didn't talk about pertaining to anxiety. We're not perfect. We're navigating through it the same way that everyone else is. So this is called What Do We Know with Wen and Whit, because it is what we know. And we also don't know everything.
We don't know everything.
So I think that's a good place to just wrap it up. I wanted to remind you guys about our YouTube channel. Wendy has been so diligently uploading our videos, so that's a great place. They're by title, so you can see like the topic without having to just scroll through your Facebook feed and guess what episode is where. So you can search for us at Wen, the and sign Whit. Or you can also find it on Wendy's blog, gainingmyperspective.com. You can find the YouTube channel there. Also subscribe to her newsletter.
Do it.
And just as a reminder, next week we will not be going live, so we will miss you guys. I'll say hi to you from Maui. Maybe I'll go live just on my own and say, haha, this is great.
What should we talk about, guys? Pop it in the comments. What should we talk about in the coming weeks?
And we do come back and check the comments. So if you do have, you know, an anecdote for your anxiety, or if you feel like sharing, you know, an instance with us. It was. I noticed that as well. A lot of people watching, but not a lot of people
Everybody's
saying,
anxious.
So
I don't want to say anything.
But this is a safe place, so please feel free to comment, let us know what you thought of the live, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Maybe some of us will, maybe both. We don't know.
All right. Have a good Wednesday.
Bye, guys.
Bye.